Hey folks, and welcome back to the Stitch Up. Today we're going to be talking about something a little goopy. That's right, it's Venom. I can't believe I'm saying this. Let There Be Carnage. Oh, that's super stupid. So, Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Isn't that ludicrous? I can't even believe this film got a sequel. It did really well. But shit, it's not aiming very high. And that's fine. That is absolutely fine. And you know what? If you like this movie, God bless you. I'm going to make fun of it a little bit. I didn't not like it. I had a pretty good time. I saw it late last year, so December last year. And I was going to do an episode on it then, but then I had the live episode and then Christmas and New Year, so it kind of didn't happen. But I did want to talk about it. I'm not going to go into the story too much. You probably know it. Eddie Brock, taken over by the Venom symbiote. They work in concert together. They're actually kind of a cool buddy cop relationship going on. They're struggling to reconcile each other's wants and needs, particularly Eddie's with Venom's, eating people's heads and whatnot. While all this is going on, Cletus Cassidy, who Carnage, played by the wonderful Woody Harrelson, is infected by the Venom symbiote and grows his own symbiote, a red one called Carnage, and hilarity ensues, apparently. It is leaning really hard into comedy, and it works in places and very doesn't in other places. That's your basic story. We also have sort of a Bonnie and Clyde relationship with Woody Harrelson's better half, Shriek, played by Naomieharris. And there's some interesting stuff going there too. But let's just get into it. We're going to start with some trivia. I'll just check over here on my trivia board. Let me see here. Well, firstly, directed by Andy-serkis, the wonderful Andy-serkis, who's Golems, but he's also quite an accomplished director and runs his own studio doing mocap stuff pretty exclusively. The script was written by Kelly Marcel, who returns after writing the original Venom film, but Tom Hardy has a screenwriting credit on this as well. Whether or not that's in name only because he came up with some story ideas or just the way that he kind of embodies Venom as a character because he does the voice as well, I'm not too sure. But he might be getting a second paycheck, so why not? Serkis says that he was influenced by the 1970 film The Odd Couple, and that totally makes sense because the way that you see Venom interact with Eddie and Eddie interact with Venom, even though it's the same actor, it feels very much like that, two halves or two sides of the same coin. Carnage was meant to be in the first film as well, and they removed him. I don't know why. Maybe so they could have something to do in a sequel. There's a lot of just symbiote fighting, same as there was in the original, so I don't know. They're not really breaking new ground. But then there's a Venom film. What ground is there to break, really? They kind of do it better than Spider-Man 3. Not in its look, though. I don't think it looks better than Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 had a tactileness and a texture that you don't get in this. These things are like amorphous and blob-like. They're just liquid. They don't really look... They don't have much in the way of differentiation apart from their colour. I love this. Serkis wanted to call the film Love Will Tear Us Apart and have that song feature predominantly, which would have been awesome. And Harrison said that he didn't want to do the voice of Carnage the way that Tom Hardy does the voice of Venom. He said that he felt like someone else could do it better and even suggested that Andy-serkis do it himself. That would have been a bit weird. I don't know. Also, I've just realized I'm wearing a Batman singlet. It's quite hot. I've been shooting these. I've shot 3 episodes back to back today, and under the lights in this room, I've gotten quite hot. So I'm in my singlet. So I'm, not trying to flex on anybody.
You'll watch this.
It's just warm. But yeah, it's the Batmans, and I'm talking about a Marvel Sony picture. So sorry about that. And this is this is my favorite bit of trivia, only because it's so fucking stupid, all right? I go on IMDb for this trivia. Where else am I going to get trivia? It is the trivia hub for cinema. It's just funny stuff that I like to find out. But this one is particularly funny. I'll read it verbatim. Hang on one second. Okay, so I can't even get through it. Woody Harrelson was in The Thin Red Line. Now, The Thin Red Line is a Terrence Malick film from late 90s, I think it was. It might have been early 2000s. And it's a war picture, right? Couldn't be any further removed from a fucking Venom movie than you could possibly imagine, all right? If you were to put 2 movies next to each other as these are the 2 most disparate movies on Earth, it will be these 2 films. They have nothing in common apart from the fact there are humans in them, and in one of them there's aliens as well, so even less in common. But this is the trivia. Harrelson, who was in The Thin Red Line, in this film gets assimilated by a red alien. Shut the fuck up. Whoever wrote this, and the only reason, he was in the Thin Red Line, and he turns into a red alien. That's two things that make sense together. What the fuck are you talking about? And the only reason this person wrote this piece of trivia on IMDb is because they learned what the word assimilated means that day. So anyway, enough of that nonsense. Let's get into it. It is a much better directed picture than the first one. I think that Andy Serkis is a more competent director, especially when it comes to the visuals. He has a firmer grasp on how an action sequence cuts together and how the liquid nature of these beings can fill a frame. Tom Hardy commits, even though the subject is horrendously daffy. He's in it, he's doing it, and he's giving it everything he's got. And I don't think it's just about a paycheck for him. I think he's invested in this character, and it's pretty thin, but he makes it something. This movie is unwatchable without him. I think if it was someone else, if you were to replace Tom Hardy with someone who doesn't swing for the fences as much, nah, not so much Venoms. Harrelson's given it a bit of something also. He's not too big and irritating and glib the way that villains can be sometimes, and he's sympathetic even though he's a serial killer. So there's something going on there too. I think he also commits. And again, I'd say it's probably attributed most to Serkis. I think he's getting great performances out of these actors because he's a great director, especially when it comes to people pretending they're not there or other things aren't there. I do wonder what this film could have been if it wasn't constantly parodying itself. If you took these characters, and there was always the threat when they made the first one that this would end up being a hard R, which probably would suit the character a little bit more. It's like trying to make a Punisher film without an R rating. It's never going to get the people that you want it to get in terms of your audience. The opportunity to in a sequel make it R, especially when your antagonist is a serial murderer, to go a little bit harder into that violence. And there is probably more violence. It's definitely more abrasive and intense. This head's being bitten off, but you don't see anything. Not that I require gore, but I just think that being that they're monsters. And a part of this kind of feels like a monster movie. Even the score is kind of got an old-timey monster movie feel about it. It would be interesting to see what that version of this film is. Oh, also the chickens, Sonny and Cher, best actors in the movie. Chickens. I will say there's you get Venoming right away. In the original film, you didn't get Venom for nearly the first hour, if I remember correctly, but it was very all of the action was contained to whatever was going on with Eddie and the space program thing. But the actual venoming part of it didn't happen until, fairly late. This, you get it right away, and it's much more superhero-y. He's more swinging from building to building, not mentioning Spider-Man, obviously, even though you probably should. But the only problem is, and forgive me, I'm not a computer artist. I have some, I can animate text and do some keyframe animation, things like that, but nothing even approaching the realm of what it would take to make a film like this. It must be really time consuming and really difficult, but I don't think it entirely works, whether it's time or budget or whatever it is, or just the fact that it's a weird structure, gelatinous blob people that then form around other people and have facial expressions and features and all that stuff. There's just something they haven't cracked there yet, and it's not like the Uncanny Valley thing where it's supposed to look human, so that's fine, but it's just this weird unreality that nothing lives in the scene is the big problem. They've got some great practical effects where there's the Venoms and the Carnages are interacting with the environment, and there's some practical stuff happening there, few and far between, but still. But the actual characters themselves don't live in the scene. They don't feel real in the scene. And considering that's the entire point of your shit, that should have been what you cracked before you started anything else. I love Michelle Williams. I think she's a great actress. Brokeback Mountain is one of the most incredible performances I've ever seen out of an actor. But what the fuck is she doing in this movie? Really, you could excise that character immediately and have someone else help Eddie at the end of the second act. That. It wouldn't even need to be anybody of note. It could be the woman who works in the grocery store. It doesn't need to be this character. I think it might be just an excuse to see Lady Venom again. There's no thrust for her. There's no character development or growth. She's only there to help Eddie reach his ultimate goals, and that's fine. You need to have characters who do that, who help your hero progress and learn new things, but they also need to be people too. And I'll get to that about character as well when we get to the end. There's something very specific about character that needs to be said. I really like the idea of Eddie's unwanted invincibility. He can't even really get drunk because of Venom. He wants to have a human experience in life, and he can't do that when he has an, I assume, by and large, immortal creature protecting him at all times. A disconnect of the human experience when you are like that. It's the reason Superman's so difficult to write, because how do you put a threat in front of someone who is completely invulnerable? So I kind of like the idea that they're playing with that difficulty of working in the superhero genre and turning on its head and saying, what does this mean for an individual who is, as a human being, is vulnerable? There's this really strange, sweet chemistry between Brock and Venom, which is funny because Tom's playing both of them. That kind of works. It's half the reason you're watching the film, let's be honest. A lot of the jokes don't land. Tom is going big. Like, he's a big actor anyway, but he's swinging at everything they throw at him and missing a lot of it, but points for commitment. The Venom voices, particularly when he's singing the song Making Breakfast at the beginning, which I believe is in the trailer, he's starting to sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Just a little bit.
I say either, you say either, I say neither, and I say neither.
Going a little Arnie, which is cool, I guess. So maybe symbiotes come from Austria. I never know. Any Austrian fans? Let me know. You got any symbiote problems down there? Oh, the other thing I want to ask as well, like comments-wise, does Venom crave brains in the comics? The character was developed after the Secret Wars in the Marvel comics. And Spider-Man had the black suit and then found that it was altering his personality the same way that it does in the movie, but in the comics it was doing that too. And then Eddie Brock ended up getting it and became Venom. I've read those books. I can't remember the writer. I think it was definitely Todd McFarlane did the art. I've read those, but I haven't read any, more recent Venom comics or anything. Does he crave brains like a zombie? Just help me out. I'm interested more than anything in the comments. Cassidy and Shriek, the two antagonists, sort of Woody Harrelson's Carnage character, they're trying to do this kind of poetic Bonnie and Clyde romanticized version of like Natural Born Killers, funnily enough, that kind of thing of the killers on the run, in love kind of thing. And the trope works in terms of villainy. I like that, but that it's way overwritten. They don't get it right. It just sounds, and again, I'm trying not to point fingers at anybody, but the script just is weak in a lot of places. And one of them is the way the characters interact with each other. They don't sound fully formed. They sound like they're trying to say cool shit to each other. Again, the biggest problem, from the script and stuff, there isn't any logic to anything. So I don't need it to be scientific and to make sense mathematically. It's about fucking aliens who attach themselves to people and get around craving brains and fighting crime. The logical steps, actually, the best way to describe it is the way that Hugo, my co-host, described it once, talking about Matt Stone and Trey Parker from South Park, who were talking about the way that a story progresses. If a story goes and then between events, it's incorrect. There needs to be a consequence. It should be not and then, it should be because this happens, cause and effect. The way that it does in everyday life, as opposed to let's go from cool set piece to cool set piece with the most just minimal stitching between the two. One thing I will say about it, there's this little tiny little subplot in there about acceptance, the accepting of not only yourself, but of the people around you and the people in your life. In this case, Eddie accepting Venom, Venom accepting Eddie. And this message of equality and understanding is played out in this scene where Venom ends up at a rave and comes out of the Eddie closet, he says, covered in glow sticks and dancing around. And it doesn't do anything for the plot, really. I mean, apart from that it kind of, at this point, Venom and Eddie have separated. Like, Venom's gotten off and he can't find another host who will live long enough to, he's killing people, live long enough to for him to go out and do what he wants to do as Venom. Talking about being free of the constraints of being with Eddie. And they end up sort of coming back together and figuring out their shit, which is, sweet brotherly kind of love thing. But at that particular moment in time, it is about, who am I? And no matter what the answer is, you being okay with it. Overall, the gags, like the comedy stuff, a lot of it falls flat. It sounds like it's clearly written for 12-year-old boys who haven't discovered girls, other boys, drinking or swearing yet. And when it all comes to a head, this is the weirdest part. It's the very, very end of the film. Venom and Carnage fight, spoilers, Venom prevails and Carnage is defeated, and there you go. But they never meet previously. Like, the only time that Tom Hardy and Woody Harrelson have a scene together is the beginning when Cassidy gets infected by Venom and then grows his own symbiote. And then they don't see each other again until the very, very end, like the final fight. Somewhere in the middle of there should be a fight between Eddie and Carnage in which Eddie gets his fucking ass handed to him because him and Venom aren't on the same team, like, emotionally. And then they have to go and regroup. And that's where you could have the buddy cop, splitting up and come back together stuff the way that you always do. Second charge, go out and fight Carnage with a new understanding of each other. There seems to be a real missed step. It's like there's a few pages of the screenplay missing or something. Maybe they're at Tom Hardy's house. So yeah, there you go. Just a little quick one on the Venoms. The Venoms 2. At least they didn't have that fucking irritating song by Eminem. You remember that song from the first one? Venom, Venom, Venom. I'll put it in. No, I don't think I will, actually. You'll know it. You'll find it. It's fine. It was a weird one. It was like a weird thing for Eminem to do. Like, of all the properties for you to glob onto and then release your secret album, without any warning that particular year with this song on there, it was just weird. It was a weird song. But anyway, it's perfectly fine popcorn fare. It doesn't even, could not even possibly be in the same league as some other stuff that's currently available. But maybe it hasn't had the time to yet. Maybe Venom 3 and 4 will be incredible. I don't know. Yeah, like I said before, it's swinging a lot of stuff and it's missing half of it. So I'd say pull back on your swings and only hit the balls that you can hit.
You feel like home to me. Like family.
Now, having said all that, I just want to make a quick point about character because it really is the difference between a great film and a not so great film. David Mamet, the playwright, who I talk about a lot because he is, he's a remarkable writer, incredibly talented human being, and understands the construction of drama in a way that most writers even couldn't possibly dream of. But I don't agree with everything that he says. And one of the things I don't agree with is that he says that character doesn't exist. He says that characters are only defined, and Aristotle says this as well in the Poetics, his book on narrative drama. The only thing a character is what they do. The consequence of what they do, and everything else outside of that is completely ancillary and has no bearing on who this person ends up being throughout the entirety of whatever the story is that you're telling. And that's also why David Mamet's characters all sound the same, because he's not writing the character, he's writing the experience that the character's having. He even says that, actors or writers or playwrights or whoever it is who investigate their characters to the point of, method actors like Robert De Niro going and driving a taxi for 6 weeks before he filmed Taxi Driver is completely pointless, because if you can't act, then that doesn't matter. It doesn't make any sense as well, because one of his other rules is write from experience. Well, if you're going to write from experience, wouldn't it be great to go and have that experience? If you're writing a story about a cab driver or about a police officer, wouldn't speaking to one of those people and living in those shoes enrich what you're trying to do? And when it comes to writing characters in particular, the things that make them different are the things that you don't see, because everyone can sound the same. Aaron Sorkin does the same thing. He has a little bit better understanding of the fullness of a character, I think, but all these characters do sound the same. If I can't hear the difference between characters, like if I'm writing something and all the characters sound the same, I can't do it. If the characters aren't there, the story definitely isn't there. This comes back to Venom by saying that if you switched the roles or if you switched the dialogue around that didn't have anything to do with plot, everybody would sound the same. There's no clear development or clear understanding of the characters from not a story perspective, but from a sense of self. And that comes from, you get that from Tom Hardy and you get that from Woody Harrelson, because they're great actors and they can imbue these very cardboard cutout versions of characters and make them something. But on the page, it all reads the same. So I guess my point is, if you want to make these characters engaging, especially if you're missing out on other stuff, like if your CG is a bit lax and story's not great or whatever, you want to get people to believe in what you're doing, have your characters be super, super strong and not be only dedicated to their ultimate end or to what they want. Like, yeah, they need to want something, but they also need to need it, and they also need to know why. So that's it. Just a little narrative chat as well, which is always fun. But, you know, we keep things light here on the Silly Stitch Up. And, you know, I hope you enjoy it. We'll see you next week. Probably not for another Venom, but for something else. You know, we always have fun. And it's always a mystery until I decide to give it up. So maybe we'll do... You know what I want to see? The sequel to this film in which the two chickens, Sonny and Cher, get venomized. And they have weird names like Bandit or Shiv or Havoc or Muffin or Waffle or any of the weird fucking names that these, you know, symbiotes end up having, which are English words, but whatever. Maybe if they do that, I'll be more interested. Thank you so much for watching again. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you next week. Take care. Peace. Venom! Venom, the shiny Venom.